Yeah. Hello. Hello. Welcome to Sprockets 2020. My name is Dietmar. This is in hand our show to tonight. Tonight, the Donald say freedom. It's very good, I say. Yeah. It's in fact the thing. But in Sprockets, what? We are doing very strange things. But you must know, there is virus all over the world. It kill everyone. Everyone die. We all dead already. Sprockets. Ooh, what is that? Is that monkey? Oh, who wants to touch monkey? Oh. What about the deficit? $1 trillion. Who's the trillion? I don't even trillion. Who cares? Oomph is not important. Monkey, stay back. Monkey, very dangerous. Democratic primary, Iowa. Nobody knows. Nobody knows in Iowa how it was venting. Was it venting? Voting. Iowa. Caucus. Nukes. Nukes on subs, little nukes being used. Somebody wants to use nukes. In Sprockets we say, no nukes, monkey, stay back. Adam Schiff is so fun. It's so fun. It's good. Iraq said, no, go away. Sprockets, monkey, stay back. Oh, smoking now 21. 21 to smoke. In Sprocketland, we are smoke. We are smoking for smoking's sake. Smoking for smoking's sake, trade dealing. Monkey, stay back. Man, no, you want to touch my monkey? He's not monkey. He's monkey. You cannot touch him. My monkey. Buckle up, baby. 2020 is here. It's gonna be crazy. Bam! All right. Sorry. I was trying to. There was like I had on like this sweatshirt, and I was like, I know how to do things totally. There we go. Hello, welcome to Escaping Dystopia. This is episode 89. It is February 4th, 2020. Tonight's episode. Senate set to clear Donald. Yeah, probably should have watched some more Sprockets. Sprockets! Oh. My accents are not, I don't spend much time preparing. So anyway, I hope anybody comes by and enjoys that. So there's a State of the Union going on right now. I am not watching it. I'll watch the excerpts tomorrow. I'm not that terribly interested. I wanted to get a show done. And life's been pretty busy around 2020, so we're gonna do this tonight. So on Spaceship Earth, we gotta deal with something here. We're gonna go through, talk a little bit about the coronavirus, the impeachment, deficits, primaries, nuclear weapons, national treasures, Iraq, smoking, trade deal, and then 2020. So we got a little bit of stuff to talk about tonight. It's been about a month or so since I've done a show. The last one I did was right after they did the impeachment. Now it is looking like they're going to clear him. We'll talk about that here in a second. So the virus here in China, so the coronavirus. Now this is again, people don't understand a lot of this. We don't really have a whole lot of cures for most viruses. You can get a vaccine if we have one. But they're fast and they're nasty. The news, I was just reading about it today. Apparently the number of infected now is up to 25,000 in China. The fatalities are in the 500 range. There was a confirmed case on one of the cruise ships. I don't know if you heard, there was a couple cruise ships that were quarantined. And the other thing that I was reading about this, and this is our Spaceship Earth news, I think this is one of those times when we need to pay attention and say, so we'll see some of the issues we have when you have a leader who has no credibility, because our president already said this was contained and taken care of, and that's obviously not the case. I don't think there's any kind of time for panic yet, but it's clear that this is not a small thing. This appears to be that kind of situation where you have an airborne, or at least easily transmittable, flu-like kind of situation. It sounds like, from what I've read, that the incubation period for the virus could be up to 2 weeks. So if you're following news on this, realize that you kind of need to look at it in those 2-week increments. And in only basically 3 of those cycles, we've gone from this, kind of whatever, to half of China shut down, most of China shut down. They've had a confirmed fatality now in another country. And so it's spread to at least 22 different countries. There's, I think, 6 to 10 cases here in the U.S. So we'll see what happens going forward on that. But it's real. It's here. And this is something you got to pay attention to. So we'll be talking about that a lot this year, most likely, as it continues to spread. I saw a number of things in my news feed about trying to get people not to be racist about the whole coronavirus stuff. And then before I actually saw anybody who actually was doing that, and then I started to see that stuff show up. I think it's unfortunate, and as this is tied to, I think this might tie into the trade situation that we're dealing with, and we'll talk about that actually a little bit later. Impeachment latest. So, look, I know everybody wanted to get impeachment. I was really excited last time. I know people are a little bit more disheartened now after they've seen what's happened. And what's happened, part of what I wanted to talk about this and do the show and all this is for history, right? So I can write this down so I can show and tell everybody, my kids and whatnot, about what it was like when it happened, right? Because this has been historic and will be historic, and I'd prefer that we, change this whole thing. But the Senate voted to not hear from witnesses and not subpoena witnesses, not subpoena documents. There's no reason you do this if you're having a real trial. And it sounds like, from what the Republicans have said now, and some of the justifications that they've had for their acquittal vote, which is going to come tomorrow, I believe, have been beyond ridiculous, just really, really silly. The danger here for the country, I think, is huge, because I think anybody who can see what the president has done and how he's justified it, and if the Senate turns around and says, that's perfect, your phone call was in fact perfect, and you, sir, are amazing, which is what the plan is, there's not going to be, he's not going to get from this, hey, I've fucked up and I shouldn't do this anymore. It's, I can do whatever the hell I want and nobody can stop me. And I think that's gonna be what we're gonna see in 2020 after this vote happens. There's something about this, and this has come up a few times, and Obama had mentioned this, and other people had mentioned this before, that the ascending, like the notion of power corrupting someone. And what they talk about in the office of the presidency is what it does is it takes all your traits and who you are and amplifies them. And so one of the things that Donald has always done is push the boundaries of what people thought he could do or could not do, and what people told him not to do. And now you'll see here in this campaign this next year some pretty serious stuff. We had Bolton come out, John Bolton, who's a national security advisor, came out and basically said, yes, absolutely, this happened. The president directed it. I'd like to talk to you about it. I've got documents. I can prove all of this. And the Senate voted to not hear from him. Like directly, say, we don't want to hear anything that you have to say on this subject. There's no, and this is one of the things that bothers me too, because my approach for politics and a lot of stuff, and this comes from a little bit for what I do for a living, but it's getting down to the reality of the situation and what are the facts, right? Where's the actual facts of the situation? And we had a direct desire in the Senate to not do that, to not figure out exactly what happened, to not put a timeline, to not question, to not figure it out. And that is a bit mind-blowing to me. But anyway, that's why I want to do the show, because this, I think, is heading us in a bad direction. There's a few things about this. I was a little bit wrong. I thought this was going to happen later this summer, and I thought that polling would show that Republicans were going to have to jettison him, and Cory Gardner was going to be one of those who'd look at it, and they would be like, no, we have to do this. The dynamics of how polarized the nation has become, and how it's even possible now for folks to change or cross over when they consider their politics to be their identity, is different than it had been before. And I think the social media amplification of that partisanship mindset has made it very difficult to move the needle on a lot of things. And indeed, as the president's showing, and we'll see how this plays out. Now again, you have to remember, in 2018, they got destroyed in the House and barely held on to the Senate when they had a very, very favorable map. Now, the Senate is generally a favorable map for Republicans because of its, those like maps where they're showing, well, all the country voted like this, and it's like all these red empty spaces, and people are like, well, land doesn't vote. And I'm like, actually, in the Senate, it kind of does. It sucks because you're going to see this, and it's going to be worse this year. But I think, I don't know. We'll see how the polling starts to look. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen before you can have a good sense of what's going to happen in the election, because we don't even know who's going to do it, which brings us to the subject after this next one. We got $1 trillion deficits, by the way, and I just want to cover this because I've talked about fiscal stuff for a long time. People always are like, oh, liberals don't know about... I do math for a fucking living. I've done these kind of reports. I do these kind of projections. We can't keep doing this. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. And this is what's going to destroy us if we don't pay attention to it. Now, I don't think these are, oh, well, that means we can't spend money on anything. Well, that's not how you do this, but the thing is to spend the money on the right stuff and to make sure we have enough money coming in, that we're in fact taxing things correctly. Tariffs are not bringing in money to pay for things. The Democratic primary, Iowa. So there were these news stories like a couple weeks ago about Iowa, and that they're going to do this new app, and they're going to do this, and it'll be all great, and all this. And I was like, wait, what? Hold on, you're using an app for doing what? And they're like, oh, we'll just transmit results, and we'll do that. It'll be all quick. And it ended up just falling apart last night. And a few of the news stories made it kind of clear about why that was. And there were some folks be like, well, they said we were supposed to download an app, I guess, and then we were going to like click on the app, and then it would do stuff. But, they said if it didn't work, we could just call in. So I decided I was just going to call in from the get-go. And so there was this one story I read where I guess 7 out of 10 precincts, and these were volunteers, right? And so just the organizational level, I'm sure that the app in a testing environment with people who knew what they were doing, I'm sure it worked fine. And I don't doubt that there may have been some code problems. It sounded like they were talking about this. So I don't go into the whole hacking, blah, blah, blah. The security side it's just, this isn't that important or whatever for that kind of stuff. But incompetence on doing this is I think, much more likely. So anyway, the results kind of came out, some of them, like 62% of them, which, okay, and have Mayor Pete and then Bernie taking it. The Sanders campaign worked really hard to keep the caucus system, just so folks remember that. They did so because the caucus system rewards people who are very passionate and have a lot of time to go and hang out in caucus all evening, which tends to be their supporters. They overperformed in caucuses last time, so that was the idea, is we're going to try and keep all these caucuses around. Hopefully this will kill the caucus as a general thing here in the U.S. I can see a caucus being really useful in smaller rural areas when people don't get together, and then they can get together and spend all day talking about something and doing that. But with the size of our country now and just the amount of time that people have to do, it ends up being a weird kind of anti-democratic selector when one of the things you have to do in order to have your voice heard in this particular type of election is go spend all day arguing about it. Now, that's not to say that, if they don't do some sort of virtual thing, right? You can have 100,000 people in their basement all yelling at each other, but I don't know that we want to Twitchify this whole thing either. Primaries, I think, work fine. Yeah. Hopefully this will move on from Iowa, too, so we won't have Iowa being like the number one Democratic primary moving forward. I do think that there will be some competition over that over the next few years, and I would like to see a middling-sized state that has a little bit more of the national demographics be some of the first ones. I hate the idea of having to start with California just because that's money. And, you know, starting with these, you know, lily white states just doesn't seem right anymore. Deploying nukes. So there's a story I posted about it today. This came up a couple years ago, and I mentioned it then. The president likes big booms. He wants to expand our nuclear thing, have so many nuclear weapons that everybody's scared of us, and blah, 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 blah. This was not a fake thing. This was a real thing. The Department of Defense went through a review on what kind of nukes we can possibly use, redid some designs, and we have deployed a new design for a nuclear weapon for the first time in decades. I think one of the first times in my lifetime, certainly my adult lifetime, as of today or yesterday. Now, what these are not super big, whoa, super bomb hydrogen masked world busters. No, these are low-yield nuclear weapons. The entire point of these is that they're small enough to be used tactically. That's the whole point of them. And so that's what's really dangerous about what's going on here. And again, you're talking to a guy who is he lied about the Iraq attack, right? So after they did the assassination, right, Iran was like, we're going to do this. They shot a bunch of missiles at our base. He comes back and says nobody was hurt. Well, 50 people were hurt. I think like 15 of them got pushed out of the country to be treated. And at the time, like 2 weeks later, only like 60% had returned active duty. And so this is one of those things where he is willing to lie about that. Now, it's not that there's, you know, that, oh gosh, Trump's a liar, presidents lie, politicians lie. Again, I hate that whole line of slope thing. But there are certain things when you will lie quickly and easily about things like that. In situations like we have now, where you have a global virus going on, you have, basically, we are at war with Iran, in their mind and ours. And so, while there has been the tit for tat, there are also a bunch of other tits out there fucking tatting. So just wait, like that's what I was saying, and I was going to talk about that later, I'll cover it now, but there's been more protests and attacks on our base in Iraq. And once you lose the goodwill of the people that you're in the country with, it's hard to stay there when you have this huge big base that's just sitting there. And that's where, you know, because people can shoot at it from anywhere. It's not like and GPS, you can program shit to go, it's not moving. So again, and to understand a little bit, remember the attack on the Saudi oil fields, right? This was a few months back. This was the responding attack from Iran to Saudi Arabia for the satellite attack that blew up on the launch pad way back before then. And the way that attack was conducted was with a drone swarm. Which should be a new sci-fi movie coming. I don't know why there isn't one already. There might be already, but Drone Swarm! Where you just, you throw on a couple pounds of explosive on 30 different drones and GPS program them, boom. Yeah, there's going to be some interesting warfare stuff over the next 10, 20 years that we're going to see. Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff has been one of the highlights of watching the impeachment stuff. His eloquence, his choice of words, his speaking things have been really fun to watch. He's obviously very intelligent, obviously cares so much about the country, and it's been nice to see that. We'll see how his profile goes. If you want to see something extremely disheartening, you can follow him on Facebook or other social media, I'm sure, and check any post that he makes and see what happens. Talked a little bit of Iraq. They raised this last year the smoking age in this country to 21 years of age. This is just something I wanted to note as we move on and change the way that people think of adulthood here in the country. We're talking about voting now and all that. And I personally am not a big fan of this, just because I don't think that it's useful. But I don't know. I'll see how it all plays out. I'd be curious what this is doing to the bar scene. I know that actually smoking was trending down tremendously as far as worthwhile habits a little while back when I was back single, but that was a decade ago, so who knows what the heck's going on now. I don't know. That was just something I wanted to note that has happened in our society, that we've changed the national smoking age to 21 like that. Just, again, just less regulations, I guess? I don't know. No, this is after John Boehner died or got out of office because, again, there was a big power nexus coming from the tobacco industry and from those states. And when he lost that power and they lost the power in the House, this is the kind of stuff that's been lurking for a while and can happen. This is one of those actually issues that I actually disagree with my own representative on. I'm pretty sure she would ban vaping tomorrow if she could. But that's a whole nother issue I need to do a whole show on. Phase 1 trade deal. So this happened over the last month. They signed a deal. They didn't release the text of the deal beforehand. They talked about it afterward and made a bunch of claims. As of now, they're actually walking back the claims because one of the big claims was that China was going to buy a whole bunch of stuff from us. But, whoa, hey, oops, super virus. Nope, they're not going to. So now what they were going to claim that they were going to do, they're not going to do. So, what? Trade deal? One more thing. If you get a chance, if you look outside, you'll see, if you ever know where Orion, the constellation up in the sky. Take time, you'll find you got Orion's belt, right, with the 3 stars, and then you got his 2 shoulders up there. If he's facing you, right, if you think that, his right shoulder, I don't know exactly how it is, but the shoulder that's a little higher, it's a little kind of a reddish star, that is the star Betelgeuse. There's a guy, I'm reading, like kids, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, so it comes up pretty often since, Zaphod and Ford are both from there. But it's I think it's like a red supergiant. Anyway, it's been getting really dim and brighter over the time because people think it might explode. So if you are very lucky and things happen just right, or happened to have happened just right, and you happen to be out there at night and you're looking at it, you might see it explode. So keep an eye out for that. That could happen this year too, or in the next 100,000 years, apparently. Or, again, it happened some time ago. When the light gets here is a question. That stuff is always very interesting. There's actually a good chapter in Hitchhiker's Guide about a guy who figured out all the grammar for speaking about things in the past that haven't happened quite yet in the future. But anyway, thanks for folks dropping by. Joe, Julian, good to see you guys digitally. Hope you guys have a good one. Family's doing great, by the way. Enjoying the snow up here. We're about to get a whole bunch more. But hope you all have a good week, and I'll do this again when we get around to it. Just trying to get most of these significant events covered. But yeah, on the impeachment stuff, again, you remember Tom Steyer, right? He's running for the Democratic thing. He spent an ass load of money getting to do this impeach, got to impeach, and everybody was like, I mean, the whole time, again, my whole thing was, I know he's going to get impeached because he just doesn't respect all of this stuff. But that was the thing with the Senate being not a 2/3 possibility, and with there being no kind of crossing the aisle that happens, there wasn't going to be ever a removal from office, and there has not been. The hope was that the evidence was so overwhelming and so clear, and this is why the Democrats picked this particular thing that he's done, because of all the things that he's done wrong, right? You could have thrown the kitchen sink at him, but then they would have been like, oh, you're just kitchen sinking it. But because they picked such a specific thing, they had to have the Republicans go so far that they refused to have witnesses in a trial. And that's how far they had to go to clear him. I think that's going to cost them a lot. I do. And so I take a little bit of solace in that. That's where my anticipation for a future that I do believe will exist, can sustain when you're a little bit like, this is so blah, blah, blah. But again, the dynamics of how this will going to play out, I think we're still okay. But, I don't know. Gotta be ready. to run. So anyway, peace out. Y'all, just want to get that little bit in, and I hope you guys have a great week, month, and year. Take care.